Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. If you guys would take your seats, please.
Nice. Love it.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. As everybody's taking their seats, welcome to the first of what we expect to be many, many, many outdoor rec innovation showcases here in Northwest Arkansas. So give a hand for that real quick. First of many. Off to my left is my very handsome colleague and friend in from Silicon Valley, Will Decker, who will do a formal introduction of himself in a few minutes. And my name is Josh Safran. I am the director of Plug and Play here in Northwest Arkansas. And just a little bit about myself. I've been here in the community for about 12 years, all as a supplier up until about 6 months ago. And we used to always laugh in the supplier community when somebody new would move to the area from Chicago or wherever. You'd always say, hey, where'd you move from? And do you work for Walmart or a supplier? And 8, 9 times out of 10, you get a chuckle and say, I moved from Chicago and I work for Kellogg's, or I'm the new buyer for this desk. And that has changed so much in the last 12 to 18 months. And I'll articulate a story when I was at Onyx about 6 months ago with my daughter after school because she wanted a snack and I wanted coffee at a really cool coffee shop. And there was a young lady there with her teenage daughter. And as my wife likes to say, I could talk to a wall, so I struck up a conversation. And she says, I'm in town from Minnesota. And I go, oh, do you work for a supplier or are you here to work for Walmart? She goes, no, I'm in town for 3 days with my daughter and we're here to bike the trails. And I go, wow. And I've heard that story now time after time after time in the last 6 to 12 months. This is no longer just a supplier community, a Walmart-based community, J.B. Hunt Tyson. There is a huge trend going on right now about outdoor recreation in Northwest Arkansas and in the state of Arkansas. And I got a chance to borrow this from my friends at the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. James Bell. But I see this sign in our parking lot every single day. And this is real world. The change is underway in Bentonville. It is no longer just about the boardroom, but it now is about the boardroom. And there's so much innovation and technology happening in the outdoor rec space here in Northwest Arkansas. And I just want to do a couple of quick plugs and shout outs. So it's not often I get a chance to model, because I don't look like a model, but I'm wearing these amazing pants from Andrew, who's here. Andrew Gibbs Dabney, founder, CEO of Lives In, a great startup based here in Northwest Arkansas, focused on outdoor wear for outdoor recreation. My friend Will is modeling another great pair of the pants. He is an amazing individual, and catch up with him after to hear his story and talk about his company. Another group I want to shout out is our friends from the GORP program, the Greenhouse Outdoor Recreation Program. Phil is here somewhere. It is an amazing group. They are an incubator focused on the development of innovation within outdoor rec, which is why we're all here today. This group went through cohort number 1. Many of them, if not all of them, are in the room. And again, you'll have a chance to interact with them in the afternoon. But some of the folks tomorrow who are going to be on the trails will get to work with Mark and Trail Pilot. And those that are renting bikes for tomorrow are going to see Encore Bike Rentals. What's even cooler about this is the first cohort was so successful with 4. The second cohort was just announced with 8. And for those math majors in the room, that's twice the amount of innovation and technology in outdoor rec. So we are here at an amazing time. I'm going to go through the agenda today because, as most of you in outdoor recreation, we don't want to be sitting in conference rooms having discussions all day. But I will tell you, it's 2 hours of fantastic content. So first, after I turn over to Will, we'll have some opening remarks, sharing a little bit about Plug and Play and what a cool organization we are. We're going to turn it over to my friend Robert Burns from the Walton Foundation to talk about what we're doing here in Northwest Arkansas in the outdoor rec space. We have an amazing keynote speaker named Phil Graves who will take the stage. To turn it over to Katherine Andrews, who came up from Little Rock as the Director of Outdoor Recreation for the state of Arkansas. And then we're going to have a panel in these very cool outdoor rec savvy chairs that's going to talk about innovation in the outdoor recreation space. And then we'll have a trends report talking about what's happening and what new innovative ideas are going on. And lastly, but the most fun, the afternoon session from 4 to 6. In this back room, we will open the wall. There's 17 amazing startups in the outdoor rec space here that we could then interact with, chat with. There'll be food and drinks. So it's going to be an amazing afternoon. Thank you everybody so much for attending, and we're excited to see where outdoor recreation goes from Plug and Play here in Northwest Arkansas. Those technology folks, if you want to see the agenda, please feel free to scan. That's the digital booklet and agenda that we're going to be using for the next day or two. And without further ado, I will turn it over to my friend, Mr. Will Decker.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. So excited to be here. And little known fact, I was a math major, so I could do that math. I'd studied math at Berkeley, and I also did water polo there. The outdoors and technology have been an integral part of my life. And I've been very lucky for the last 5 years to be running retail at Plug and Play. Every day I get up and I get to help another startup on their journey to get very big, very fast. I believe the outdoor rec industry is that next space. It is just ripe for tremendous growth in new business models and new technology and innovation. So I could not be more excited to be here today. There's a lot of overlap between the mission that Plug and Play has overall and the outdoor rec community. In outdoor recreation, it's connecting people to places to get awareness and passion and a sense of ownership for those spaces and conservatism. And for us, conservation, at Plug and Play, we're also around connecting different groups of people around a central theme and idea. Entrepreneurs, corporations, and investors. And in doing that in various ways, you can really accelerate new ideas into industries and new technologies to be adopted. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that. Plug and Play is a family office. The family started with the very initial .com boom in Silicon Valley. Right place, right time. The family owns some commercial real estate, and Google was a tenant. They went from 4 to 40 employees in what is now the Lucky Building, 165 University Avenue. That street runs right into Stanford campus. Next we had Levchin and Thiel move in, and PayPal grew. It became very obvious that the future business opportunities lay within these technology companies. You fail forward to today, and we have learned many different models that work and don't work. What sticks are these main areas. Plug and Play is most known as a very active, the most active early stage investor. Over 200 investments per year across different industries and geographies. Incredible ventures team does that. Plug and Play works with over 500 corporations, helping them understand, build, develop, mature their innovation capabilities, working with startups and with each other. And Plug and Play runs these innovation programs that are based on industries or themes that are dedicated. You have topics, you run a program for 3 months, take a little bit of a break and do it again. Super awesome. That's what this is gonna be if we do it right. My second favorite day at Plug and Play, guy walked by my desk and said, "Did you hear the news that PayPal is buying Honey for $4 billion? No, his Google alert game was much stronger than mine. So we talked to the founders, Ryan and George. Is this true? It was true. Ryan and George started Honey. They spent a month driving from LA back up to Silicon Valley doing the pitch to VCs for money. Plug and Play was the second check, $50K into that company. So the next unicorns will be from here, I believe, in outdoor rec from Bentonville. So this is why I'm so excited, is to get more folks on this list. The industry programs, it's the fastest area of growth for plug and play overall. So I run retail and media. Josh runs the Bentonville program, part of supply chain and logistics, soon to be outdoor rec. And all these different industries come about because corporations are ready to engage with that outside innovation world, and startups help them accelerate their growth. And coming soon is outdoor rec. This is first, and by all being here, I think you're all committed to being in our very first program, which will start in the spring of next year. We'll do a batch 0 here, connecting it with innovation hubs in Silicon Valley, and to be announced around the US and beyond. So really excited to make this a thing. My personal inspiration has evolved. Who here knows of Norman Clyde? He's a very California-specific legend, white dude, and he is an incredible character. Read about him, but when he'd write his encounters with the High Sierra, what he's known for most is he has more first-time recorded ascents of Sierra Nevada mountains than the next people by an order of magnitude. And when he talked about innovation, what stood out for me in his story was it was about the product and the shoes. He had shoes that had nails in the soles, so they provided better grip on the granite and the hard rock in the Sierra. And they were being made all over the world, and he'd try them all out and see which ones performed better. Super cool. Heather Anderson on his hikes, familiar with her? Yes, in the back, what a beast. So she was first female, but probably one of the few people to complete a calendar year Triple Crown. This is all 3 emblem through hikes in the US. That's the AT, CDT, P. It's like insane, mind-boggling what she did. And she co-wrote a book, Adventure Ready, highly recommend. I have my signed copy. And what was very stood out to me, again, from that, was she was asked after one of her feats about her mantra. A lot of these long hikes, you have a mantra. And at first she couldn't remember. She said, I don't know if I had one. No, wait, I do. The record isn't gonna break itself. So cool. So the next source of inspiration should reflect anyone and everyone who wants to be inspired by someone enjoying the outdoors who looks like them. Also, the innovation that needs to happen in this industry that we want to see in outdoor recreation won't happen by itself. It'll happen because of us here in this room today. So I'd like to welcome Josh back up to the stage to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, sir. So you don't get to hear me for a long period of time, so you should all be very thankful, but I'm honored to share the stage and turn it over to Robert Burns from the Walton Foundation. I've had a chance to work with some amazing folks in my last 6 months here at Plug and Play, and none have been better and more helpful for what we're doing here in this economy than Robert. So Robert, please.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I want to say up front, for those that are not from the area, welcome to Northwest Arkansas, specifically welcome to Bentonville. And I will say this was not planned with Josh, but I'm also happy to say I also have lifts and pants on today. So, and if you aren't used to them, they're very comfortable. And then I ended up buying my niece a pair and sent them to her 2 nights ago. So kudos to the team that's here today. I also just want to say I've lived in the area for a total of 1 year at this point. I was drawn to the opportunity at the Walton Family Foundation for multiple reasons, but one of those was very humbling to work directly with the Walton family. We are truly a family-led foundation, and this family is very visionary, and one of the visionaries they had for this area was to build this incredible trail network that exists today. And recently, in partnership with the foundation and a number of other funders, but this is really the vision of the family. And with the trails that have happened, there was an article in the last week where, from a mountain bike perspective, folks were asked to name the top cities in the world for mountain biking. This article named Bentonville as #1. Pretty incredible. I will also say I grew up on a small family farm in North Carolina. The outdoors has also been a part of my life for my entire life. And one of the things that I love here in Arkansas is the proximity to the natural beauty and the assets that we have, many of which are still undiscovered, and I think that's a balance we're trying to achieve. We're here from the foundation perspective. We invest in a number of areas, but I want to highlight a couple of those. One, we have invested in trail building in the past. We also feel that's very important to connect that to on-street infrastructure, so that if you're riding a bike on a trail and you want to get somewhere else in the city of Bentonville or Rogers or Fayetteville or Centerton or any of the communities around here, you can do that. That's something we're working very closely with our municipal partners on and the counties in the area. The other area I want to highlight, I'm going to call out one of my colleagues. Elin, if you could raise your hand. Elin Lai is in the audience too, from the Walton Family Foundation, is one of our very able program officers. She highlights and works in the area of entrepreneurism. We feel at a foundation level, it's incredibly important to build the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Northwest Arkansas. Thank you for what you do. It takes a lot of courage to be an entrepreneur, a lot of hard work, and we're certainly appreciative of that. I will also say we're very open at the foundation to ideas that you may have about where are there gaps in the ecosystem as you experience it. And if you're not here in Northwest Arkansas and you are interested in locating your business here, please let us or Plug and Play or others know. I want to also say thank you to Josh and to Will and the folks at Plug and Play who have been really vital to bringing up the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Northwest Arkansas. The other person I wanted to call out, and it's really the state, because you're going to hear from Katherine in a bit. We have a very active partnership with the state of Arkansas, and they've made incredible strides in making outdoor recreation more accessible, but also working with other states where outdoor recreation is highlighted. And the last time I saw Katherine, we climbed a mountain near Little Rock and got some beautiful vistas on a day like today, but it was really fitting to be part of that. The other thing I want to highlight at the foundation level that we talk about a lot and that we invest into is the spirit of inclusion. And that means that everyone that wants to have access to the trails or comes here and they're visiting or they move here, they've lived here for decades, that they can find their way in this community and that this area is the most vibrant and inclusive as possible. And if you're not experienced on the trails, we have wonderful opportunities and entrepreneurs that will help you become experienced on the trails so that things become accessible and they become part of the ecosystem here in Bentonville. But we're excited to welcome you here. We certainly appreciate all the work that Josh and team at Plug and Play have done. And certainly, again, open ears to what we can do at a foundation level to increase the entrepreneurial spirit and build out the innovation here in Northwest Arkansas. Thank you.
All right, well, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome to the stage for our keynote Phil Graves, who serves as CEO of the Wild Idea Buffalo Company, a mission-driven business that offers 100% prairie grass-fed and field-harvested buffalo meat and leather. Prior to joining Wild Idea, Phil led the global corporate development program at Patagonia and founded and served as managing director for its corporate VC unit called Tin Shed Ventures. Please give a very warm welcome to Phil.
Thank you. Howdy. So before I get rolling, I'll say while I was at Patagonia, I had a few speaking opportunities. And since the pandemic happened, I have not spoken publicly for at least 2 years. And I was talking to my wife this morning, like, gosh, I'm going to be rusty. I'm going to fumble over my words. And she goes, where is it again? I said, oh, it's in Bentonville. And she goes, oh, yeah, Bentonville's great. You should wear your bike socks because everybody in Bentonville loves to bike. So this is like my little comfort blanket right here. So thanks to Plug and Play for hosting us. Entrepreneurialism, the outdoors, and outdoor rec are some things that I'm personally really passionate about. Excited to speak to you all today and share my story, cover a little bit from my time at Patagonia, my background before Patagonia, and then talk about this Wild Idea company that I'm at right now. My career started not too far from here in Dallas-Fort Worth. I went to school at Texas A&M. Fond of the University of Arkansas Razorbacks, but I'm a Texas Aggie alum, grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. and started my career down the fairly traditional path. I worked at PwC and Deloitte, corporate financial consulting. I'm a CPA and a financial analyst in my background. And I was always interested in the great outdoors. I was very interested in environmental responsibility, conservation, social responsibility, things like fair trade labor. But I didn't have an opportunity to deeply connect the work that I did into those things that I was personally passionate about. So transitioned from the Dallas practice of Deloitte to California. That's where I was first exposed to Patagonia. Had heard of them, of course, like many folks have, but really went deep in terms of what the company stands for, how the mission of saving the home planet is front and center, and had long admired and respected the company while I was in the San Francisco practice of Deloitte. The timing was sublime because as I was slowly accumulating more pieces of Patagonia gear for my own personal use and gifting them, Patagonia was growing and expanding. They had long made responsible apparel, and that goes back to the early 70s, but they were getting into things like funding the next generation of responsible business leaders. They were getting into food and regenerative and organic agriculture, which is really important, and I'll go deeper into that topic a little bit with the Wild Idea Buffalo transition. And they were also looking hard at how can we grow in a responsible way and taking on things like re-commerce or resale. It's a trend that's been exploding in apparel. It's been around for cars and other things for many, many years. But I think one of the big trends that are here to stay is the re-commerce or resale side of things. So had a very unique opportunity to come work directly with Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, board of directors, and former CEO Rosemar Cario. So that was a 7-year run, lots of pro tips from starting Patagonia's venture fund, funding about a baker's dozen or so startups during my 7 years there. And one of the things that was unique is I had the opportunity to look at thousands of applications for funding for mission-driven businesses. And so while I don't know everything, far from it, I've seen a lot of companies rise and fall, and there's some key trends that I think are helpful takeaways for each of you as you build outdoor rec and innovative businesses or try and recruit and retain them in your communities here in the Northwest Arkansas region. So let's transition to some tips for startups. One of the biggest things I'd recommend doing is starting with the team. Having a team with a diverse set of skills, complementary skills, different experiences, those are really valuable things. Just like the Walton Family Foundation was talking about the importance for diversity, equity, inclusion. Those things have to be key attributes when you build a team and look at your market. So for the team side of things, emphasizing folks that can bring different things to the table, all chip in and contribute valuable experiences, and then ultimately help grow the business together, because there's certainly a honeymoon period when you start a new business for the first time, and there's a lot of things that you're personally fired up about, and then just like many relationships, whether it's a marriage or a long-term friendship, the telling time is what happens when things don't go according to plan. Are you going to be able to work together and pivot your business model? What if you have a different perspective on who's your ideal investor that you bring to the table, the next topic? And all those things are really important. So make sure that you carefully curate the team and ideally, again, emphasize complementary skill sets. A quick aside there, when I was at Patagonia, we built a college case competition that was anchored by the University of California, Berkeley. And the teams would be comprised of MBA students and cross-disciplinary students too, folks from say an environmental background, conservation background, an engineering background. And what we saw, the submissions that were the strongest in solving these intractable environmental problems like single-use packaging or helping scale regenerative organic agriculture, is that the teams with the most diversity were by far the strongest teams. If it's solely an MBA team that has a similar background in corporate finance or what have you, that team would have some good perspectives, but it would be a very narrow focus. So I would definitely want to underscore diversity, complementary experiences when you build the team or look for teams that you want to attract to this region here. Next up is aligned investors. This is essential. If the goal is to build a long-term purpose-driven business, you have to make sure that the capitalization table reflects folks that have that same desire for mission. It doesn't mean that growing's bad or that an exit is bad, whether it's a strategic sale or a public offering, but taking a long-term perspective when you build your investor base is right underneath building a top-notch team in terms of making this business operate well for the long haul. I've seen many times a great team come together, but they bring in the wrong capital. That's more of a short-term focus, and what they're seeking to do, they push for growth, profitability above all. But again, this is where Yvon Chouinard or even Warren Buffett, who's famously quoted as saying his favorite holding period is forever, to make sure that the time periods align in what you're seeking to do. So make sure you have these conversations up front. Where do you want to take the business? Is there an exit plan? What does that look like? Those are all conversations that are far better to have up front before you get to a fork in the road and everybody has a differing point of view. Next up is building the best product. So oftentimes you will have a prototype, you'll have an early stage product, whether it's software, service, or a physical product like a mountain bike or GPS or what have you. And building the best product, I think, is something that will be universal in terms of feedback. You've got to have an edge. How are you different from the competition? Having a durable product is great in terms of just showcasing the value if something is built to last. And then what I learned is that it's far more powerful in the realm of sustainability, or what's broadly known as ESG, environmental social governance right now, to build durable products, because the product that lasts the longest is the one that has the best impact on the environment over the long term. That is why Patagonia was able to be one of the first to market in the worn-wear resale division, where the company will buy back pre-used, pre-loved gear, give you a gift card, and then resell it in the secondary market. If the company did not build a bomber product that was built to last, then you can't do that. It would fall apart, and there would be no resale market. So again, it makes sense for the environment, but while I was at Patagonia, that was also one of the higher growth divisions of the company. It was profitable. So a CFO would look at this different income stream and say that, hey, that's great. It lets us connect with younger customers, new audiences. It's a lower price point since it's a pre-owned item. But the only way to do that is to build a high-quality, durable product. Traceability and transparency, you're seeing more and more of this. This is increasingly important for customers across all different segments. With the rise of social media, blockchain, other traceability components, if you don't build a responsible supply chain, and we'll unpack what that means in a slide, then it's going to be exposed. It's just a matter of time with today's technology. So emphasize traceability in the supply chain. If there's some component on the raw material side that you don't know where they come from, or if maybe they're suboptimal today, but you have a plan to get there, have a plan to get there and showcase it to your customers. You don't have to be perfect. I'll give an example, like for Wild Idea Buffalo Company, we have worked really hard on our packaging. We have a perishable product and shelf-stable products, but for perishable products, think of like Omaha steaks. You have to deal with ensuring that it arrives frozen or at least cool and it's safe for consumption. So we have a biodegradable foam that you can wash down your kitchen sink or put in your home compost pile. We have a cardboard box that's made from recycled materials. It's recyclable. But our pain point, our stickyality, is that we need a plastic bag to wrap over that right now, single-use plastic bag. And then if you think about the grocery store, whether it's Walmart or any other grocery store, there's a lot of single-use plastic, and it's there for a reason because it's affordable. It blocks moisture and oxygen. It keeps the product safe, which is important. But it's still single-use plastic, and a lot of it doesn't get packaged. So we internally debated, do we do like a product unboxing? Do we just wait until we have the perfect solution for this? But we ultimately decided that no, let's showcase where we've made some strides. Our customers want to know where we are in this journey. And then ultimately, they'll either applaud us for our efforts or not. But at the end of the day, we're letting you know exactly where we stand. And I think that behind the scenes look at what your company is doing and building, where you've made some wins, where you've stubbed your toe, and where you're actively working on solutions, those are the kind of things that will help differentiate your business relative to the competition that may just put some nice things on a blog or company website, but there's no substance there to back it up. The last thing I'll hit on is responsible supply chains for the pro tips for startups, and I've got a dedicated slide to it. And a supply chain matters because you have to get your product to market. You can't sell a product if you have a physical product without that supply chain. But if you also reflect on what the science shows for durability, for the impact on the environment, building a responsible supply chain is the #1 thing that you can do. The data shows when I was at Patagonia that anywhere from 60 to 90% of a product's overall environmental impact is tied up in the materials and the manufacturing of that product. So people often get wrapped around the axle about shipping and things coming from overseas, and yes, that does account for a component of the overall footprint, but typically it's 5%, 10%, or 2%. So I'd encourage each of you to go really deep on the supply chains that represent the products that you build over time. And there's a lot of thou shall nots and things that you should avoid. We can touch on that in a bit. But what I like to do is focus on a case study, an illustrative example of a company that has built a responsible supply chain, and that is Borreo. They were founded by 3 entrepreneurs that had, again, diverse complementary backgrounds, going back to our previous slide. One was a former Ernst & Young professional, corporate financial advisory services background, so he loves spreadsheets like I do. Another one was a product engineer. He worked at Boeing, so he really understood the technical side about how to build a product that performs well and is durable. And another one was an environmental consultant that worked with corporations, large companies, governments, and help them reduce their footprint and chart a path forward that can help them be more sustainable. Again, this is kind of right at the rise of ESG about 5-10 years ago. And so these 3 friends, they were surfers, and they would go to the beach and notice there's so much plastic pollution, and it was really bothering them, as it bothers a lot of us if you go to see a beautiful river or lake and look at an ocean, and it's tainted by this plastic that's going to sit there and last thousands of years. So they reflected on what should we do? Do we just do a beach cleanup? Do we kick some money to Surfrider Foundation? All great things to do. But they are smart folks, and they said, no, let's form a business, and let's really go deep in the problem. We think nonprofits have a role, we think government has a role, but don't underestimate the power of business as a force for good. So they examined the problem, and they said, okay, the United Nations data shows that 10% of all of the plastic in the ocean comes from fishing nets. And the good news about these commercial fishing nets that you see here is that they have a fairly consistent plastic that goes into the production of these nets. So it's either a nylon or an HDPE. That represents about 90+% of all the commercial fishing nets that ends up in the ocean. And it also represents 2 classes of plastic that are widely used. So I'm sure we could go around the room here and see nylon and HDPE in many applications. So that's a good sign for them, because if you just go clean up plastic at a beach, you're going to have different types, different stages of degradation, and it's hard to build a scalable model off that inconsistent of feedstock. So they started with skateboard decks and using the ocean plastic for these skateboard decks. They had sunglasses that they built the frames out of these end-of-life fishing nets, and that was kind of where they thought they were going to go. They were going to build a direct-to-consumer, eco-friendly product with things like fishing nets into skateboard decks, into sunglasses, and into Jenga games, too. That was their, I think, 3rd product to market. And while there's certainly nothing wrong with that, you get a better margin typically going direct-to-consumer. They're building their brand. We were really hungry collectively, me sitting on the board and the team and their mission to get fishing net waste out of the ocean to scale this thing up. And so that's when we recognized, okay, let's look at a different model. Let's partner with other brands and be kind of like an Intel Inside, where we can use their brand to build products, but we source the Borreo material called Net Plus into that. So first one you see here is the Patagonia hat. The brims are made with a recycled fishing net product. Things like puffy jackets and shorts and other products are going to be made with fiber from these fishing nets as well. And what was really great to see is that Patagonia's approach, kind of like Tesla's approach of open sourcing their IP that's good for the planet, was to work really hard, build a supply chain, and then bring others along. And so that's exactly what Brio did. You can see some of the strongest brands in the world reflected up there that are interested in tapping into this supply chain. Now Brio has quintupled in size since we first invested when I was at Patagonia. And more importantly, they're cleaning up the oceans at scale. So again, just a great example, one that I'm really inspired by, and I think there's so many other lessons that we can draw from in the importance of building an environmentally and socially responsible supply chain. Okay, my favorite topic, regenerative organic agriculture in Buffalo. Here's why it matters. So we touched a little bit on responsible supply chains, and in the product world that I live in, you have two types of materials to build products. You have synthetic materials, that's all about using recycled materials, durability, making sure it doesn't shed plastic like some fleece can do. And then on the flip side of that, you have natural materials. And in general, people think natural materials are far better than synthetic materials, but that's complicated. It's not always as black and white as that. Durability, again, matters to what I said before. If you build a sock out of cotton that lasts 3 uses versus a sock made of synthetic material that lasts thousands of uses, there's a trade-off there that you have to think about. So whenever we look deeply at the natural material side, synthetic material side, at Patagonia in the 90s, when my friend over here, Karen, was there, they learned that the worst material for the environment was the conventional cotton that was used. And shocking to many people at the company at the time, thinking that oil and gas, petroleum, that's the worst thing that you can use for the environment. But really, the toxic chemicals, the pesticides, the petrochemical inputs that go into fertilizers that go into the production of food and fiber is actually far worse for the environment. And so that's when the company started going deep into regenerative organic agriculture and the corresponding supply chains for that. The company, 93 or 96, switched to organic cotton.
I left in
96, okay. It was one or the other. 1996, Patagonia switched to organic cotton. Great step. Organic, as you know, it means it's free from harmful chemicals, things that can last thousands of years. It's safer for farm workers, safer for people that eat those products. So in general, organic is a great step. But by itself, organic doesn't necessarily mean regenerative, which we learned is incredibly important. And so while at Patagonia, I helped build a new certification called Regenerative Organic Certified, which uses organic as a foundation and then goes to the next level to make it regenerative. It uses things like less tilling or no tilling. It uses things like cover crops to keep the soil covered, protect the soil from drying out and being exposed. And bottom line is it's better for future generations. If we can farm regeneratively and organically, ideally coupled together, it's one of the most powerful things that we can do for solving intractable problems like climate change. It's incredibly powerful for human health, animal welfare, and the environment. And for me personally, my grandfather was a dairy farmer. I went to Texas A&M. I didn't study ag, but I've had a long passion for it. And was first connected with my friend here about 7 years ago. Wild Idea sources the jerky for Patagonia's food business, Patagonia Provisions, and we also provide the leather for the Patagonia Workwear Boot program. And I got exposed to buffalo on the prairie for the first time, free-ranging over thousands of acres. I still have kind of chills every time I think about it. And what I learned in really digging into the science is that when you run a ranch regeneratively, when you bypass just to be blunt, the disgusting confined animal feeding operations and all the atrocities that happen there from an animal welfare standpoint, and do things in a regenerative and organic way. And in this case, Wild Idea, we actually harvest the buffalo on the prairie where they were born on, where they live their lives, and they spend their entire existence freely grazing thousands of acres. We have about 350,000 acres on our half dozen ranches that we source from. It's better for human health. A lot of outdoor junkies here thinking about what you eat, how you get to that next level in performance when I'm riding or running or climbing or doing whatever it is you're passionate about. know that grass-fed buffalo meat, from whether it's Wild Idea or another company, it's lower in fat, it's higher in protein, it's higher in vitamin B, vitamin E, omega-3s. It is far better for you as a human. And my wife and I, with our 3 daughters, we think about what we feed them every day. They went back to school. So again, thinking deeply about what we do as consumers, about what we invest our time and our talents in as business leaders and community leaders, it's incredibly important. So encourage all of you to take that deep look, be very introspective as you build your businesses, as you think about the businesses that you're going to attract to your community. And I'd highly encourage you to really think about mission first. Again, 10 years in corporate finance, I was trained to look at the profitability of one company relative to its peers. And while I was at Patagonia, the company punched above its weight in terms of growth, profitability, and did these incredible things for the environment and for the people that are part of its supply chain. Wild Idea, same story. You don't have to have a model that hemorrhages cash and does environmental good. And there are plenty of examples, whether it's Borreo or Wild Idea, where you can build a business where environmental and social good are inextricably linked to revenue and profit. And I'd encourage each of you to think deeply about that. Think about your supply chains when you build your products and take them to market. And last but not least, take that long-term view. A lot of times these decisions will have short-term pain, switching from conventional cotton to organic cotton. A lot of short-term pain, had to build a supply chain, more expensive, not enough product out there to meet demand, but the company did it. It was a hard choice, a bold choice, but that provided the foundation for what Patagonia is doing today. And same with Wild Idea. Dan O'Brien, our founder, started with cattle and the traditional model, and it wasn't working, he wasn't making money. He was an endangered species biologist and helped reintroduce peregrine falcons. And as a bird lover, he goes, how do I build a business that can help birds? Because that's his passion. And he said, well, buffalo are a keystone species. They help build healthy soil. They build healthy grasslands that have root systems that go down 10 to 15 feet and can sequester literally tons of carbon. And so for him, switching to buffalo made really good sense for the birds, the bees, the butterflies, all these species that are being hit really hard with the chemical industrial ag model that we have today. And by switching to buffalo, he did the right thing for those critters. And it's also been a great business outcome for us. Today, we are the largest grass-fed, field-harvested buffalo company in the world. We're profitable, we're growing. If Walmart's interested, talk to me afterwards. And again, best for future generations. That's what really resonates with me, and I just encourage each of you to find your purpose, dig deep into what that is, unpack it, and then build a business that's wrapped around that. So that's all I got. Thank you. I really appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, good afternoon again. Thank you, Phil. That was fantastic. Thanks for flying in to join us. As we were brainstorming for this event, we were trying to figure out, wouldn't it be cool if we could have the director of outdoor recreation for the state of Arkansas come share the stage with us? And so we were put in touch with Katherine Andrews, and we called her. We got on a Zoom meeting with her, and she said, yes. And I said, well, we haven't told you the date yet. She says, well, yes, I'm coming. So she dropped her everything. She opened up her calendar, and she agreed to come spend some time with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Katherine Andrews, Director of Outdoor Recreation for the state of Arkansas, on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are y'all? All right. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the Office of Outdoor Recreation in Arkansas, who I am, why I'm qualified for this position. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the economic impact numbers for Arkansas nationwide as well. Talk about some of the different industry sectors within the overall outdoor recreation economy in Arkansas. Then we're going to talk about some of the creation of these offices across the U.S., why Arkansas needs one, why we created it in the first place, and what we're going to do in the future. So, without further ado, this is me. I am an Arkansas native, born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. Grew up hunting, fishing, camping, kayaking, biking, boating, climbing, anything and everything outside. I still do those things. So in my personal life, I love to be outside in Arkansas. In my professional life, I went up here to University of Arkansas for school for finance. Thought I was going to do something in the finance world, but here I am in outdoor recreation. I went to work for a few years in commercial real estate in Little Rock, then worked for almost 7 years at the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. First as a project manager in business development, traveling all across the state, meeting with our existing industries, talking about different resources that are available for our companies to grow, helping recruit companies to Arkansas, generally selling Arkansas as the best place to come and live and do business. Then I started, my last stint of time there, started the new Small Business and Entrepreneurship Development Division at the AEDC. So connected all of our entrepreneurial service organizations together, really identified a lot of our small business resources across the state, managed all of our small business incentives from a state level. So have a very good understanding of resources statewide and nationally for our businesses to grow. Let's get a little bit into the economic impact nationwide. So the Bureau of Economic Analysis started studying the impact of outdoor recreation on our nation's economy in 2012. Today, well, these numbers are for 2020. The 2021 numbers are coming out in November, so we should have those numbers pretty soon. But you can see these numbers, $689 billion in economic output. So economic output is the flow of money, the exchange of money between producers and consumers. So when somebody buys a backpack, that's the flow of money. When somebody goes to a duck hunting lodge, that's the flow of money. So all of that economic output, that money that's generated into our economy, that makes up that $689 billion. 4.3 million jobs, that's a lot of jobs. So we have heard, and trends are showing that, and these are 2020 numbers again, that those numbers are going to keep going up for this next year in November when we get these next numbers. So, like I said, in 2012, the BEA started studying the economic input of outdoor recreation on our nation's economy. The first Office of Outdoor Recreation was created in 2013 in Utah. So everybody started to see, hey, this is a big deal. This is a big part of our economy. All of our other big sectors of the economy, food production, corporate headquarters, distribution and logistics, defense, ag, all of these other giant sectors in our economy have some type of representation within state government or on a national level to help represent them and help advocate for them, help share resources. And until 2012, we really had no idea the output of outdoor recreation on our economy. So in 2012, when those numbers came out, Utah was the first to say, hey, we're going to start this, we're going to create an office and really get behind some of this momentum. So since then, 16 states have created offices of outdoor recreation. Arkansas is the 16th. We are kind of on an island, as you'll see. North Carolina currently does not have a director, so I'm calling us the only office in the South for now until they get a director. But pretty cool. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, and Texas have all called and said, hey, how did you guys get this started? We really want to jump on the train. What are you guys doing? So other states are starting to get the picture and starting to get into the trend. So why Arkansas? Why does Arkansas need an Office of Outdoor Recreation? These are a few things. This is not an exhaustive list. In the last couple of years, these are a few of the things that have helped some of the momentum behind why this office was created. These first 3 bullet points on the left were from February of 22, the Arkansas Tourism Ticker, sponsored by Talk Business and Politics. These are our highest tourism figures that we have recorded to date, and they are going up. We got our new numbers recently, and I will update those soon, but those are even higher. So during the pandemic, we saw tons of people coming to Arkansas when everything else was closed down. Why were they coming to Arkansas when everything was closed down? They were coming to play outside. And we saw that with record visitations to our state parks, record visitations to our national park system. Out of the 400 parks in the national park system, Hot Springs National Park is now the 38th most visited park with 2 million visits last year. And then I wanted to read this little excerpt just to give you kind of an idea of some of the awesome assets that we have in Arkansas. This excerpt made James Bell, gave him goosebumps. So it's really good, I promise. The natural state has over 100,000 miles of streams and rivers, 600,000 acres of lakes, 5 world-class epic rides, mountain bike trails, thousands of miles of hiking trails, over 3.2 million acres of public land, America's first national river, the Buffalo National River, which celebrates its 50th anniversary this year, the world's longest bayou in Arkansas, the highest waterfall between the Rockies and the Appalachians, big game hunting, the only state in the US where you can hunt both an elk and an alligator in the same state, world record trout, and on and on. You can mountain bike through the Ozark Mountains, gravel grind in the Delta, whitewater kayak, paddle through the bayous, birdwatch in the Mississippi Flyway, rock climb the bluffs, camp and hike in our state parks, and enjoy a multitude of pristine natural areas, WMAs, and federal lands. So that's what makes Arkansas unique and what sets us apart. A lot of the momentum that we saw during COVID really helped spur the creation of this office. So these are some of the numbers that the BEA gave us for Arkansas. I think some of the most important information is that sentence down at the bottom. We are top 10 in all of growth. That is a big deal for Arkansas. Our top 3 economic outputs are boating and fishing, number 1. So all of our big boat manufacturers, fishing lure manufacturers, river guides. Number 2 is RVs. So all of our wholesale RV sellers, parts sellers. Third is hunting. We are a big hunting state. So those are our 3 big outputs. All right, so all of this economic impact information, all of the momentum that you saw on the screen was happening. And so we had a group of stakeholders come together and bring this to the governor and say, hey, look at all this awesome stuff that Arkansas has, all of the great stuff that's happening. We need to have an Office of Outdoor Recreation. So they brought that to the governor. He said, love it, great idea, let's do it. So this office was created by executive order in June of 2021 in the Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism. Secretary Stacy Hurst is my boss, and she has been wonderful and instrumental in helping get this office off the ground. Here are my advisory board members, 10 people who are very instrumental in their respective industries in Arkansas in outdoor recreation, and they have been also instrumental in helping form the creation of this office, because this is a totally new part of state government. And so you have to build the structure, the formation, strategic goals, mission statement, plan, all of that stuff. And all of our advisory board members have been wonderful in helping do that. So we sat down and talked about, what is this office going to do? What is our main goal? Well, in a nutshell, we are going to help grow the outdoor recreation economy. So that flow of money that we talked about. So there are 2 big user groups that I focus on, and one is our industry partners. So bike shops, boat manufacturers, river guides, outfitters, duck lodges, somebody that makes parts for a backpack, any of our outdoor recreation companies in Arkansas. The second is our communities. So I've been visiting, I lost count at 8,000 miles that I've traveled since November when I started, that I've been traveling all across the state, meeting with our communities and our companies, talking about different resources that are available to help them grow. Since I came from the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, I know that they focus on 7 targeted industries that are part of our overall Arkansas economy, and not one of them is outdoor recreation. There's no office or agency within state government that's solely focused on helping our outdoor recreation companies and communities grow. So that's the differentiating factor about why this office was created. So I'm helping connect them to incentive programs or people like Phil Shellhammer at GORP, or a contact at the SBA or the Arkansas World Trade Center. Listening to what they need and then helping connect them to resources as well as our communities. So we actually have the Outdoor Recreation Grants Program that was started back in the 60s. Last year, they granted $3.6 million in infrastructure funds for communities all across Arkansas to help build trails, pocket parks, parking lots at trails, maintenance on trails. That's a lot of money all across Arkansas for recreation. And there are tons of other programs that our communities are getting connected to help them grow. And then also helping them understand the impact of what that means. And by building trails, what that can do for their quality of life, retention of their workforce, and all kinds of things. So those are my two big user groups that I help. So we've got two big primary goals with that in mind: connection and collaboration, serving as a connector of resources, growing relationships, being the central point of contact. We just launched our website a couple weeks ago. So now we have a place to point people. We're going to build upon that website, include a lot of different resources for both of those user groups, as well as a lot of this economic impact information to help people grow. And then also promotion and awareness. So there are other groups out there like the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, who are doing awesome, incredible things, especially in conservation. My role is not necessarily in conservation. My role is to help promote all of the awesome things that they're doing and help with any kind of initiatives and support anything that I can do for what they're doing. So promoting both all of the awesome things that are happening across our agencies statewide in Arkansas, and then also promoting all of the fun stuff that's going on out there. So working with our Division of Tourism, who does that. That's their main role, is promotion and awareness of all of the really cool, awesome things to do in Arkansas. And with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. So here's my info. I have a lot more info. I've stretched this presentation out to an hour and a half before. So if you want more information, if you want the slideshow, I've got a lot of stuff I can send you. So just get in touch and I'll be here after. Thank you guys.
Amazing, thank you so much. Gosh, incredible numbers. It is my pleasure, distinct pleasure, to welcome one of our team members to the stage. Ori Fuentes is an incredible leader in our ventures world, leading efforts across retail and media, and has brought together a phenomenal panel for a discussion. So Ori, come on to the stage.
Perfect. Really excited to talk to everyone today. We have a phenomenal panel, and so I'm going to invite all of my lovely panelists up to the stage because we have so much to talk about and so little time, because we want to make sure everyone has ample time to meet all our wonderful startups, network, talk to all the folks we've talked to. So definitely going to kick things off with just a high-level introduction of who do we have here on stage. I think in terms of the honor that I have of being able to share the stage with absolutely everyone here is an honor. We have folks from industry, venture capital, the startup ecosystem. We have everyone here, and I think that's the beauty of this event. So if anything, I'll go ahead and start off by introducing Alex. So Alex is a serial entrepreneur. He already has a successful exit under his belt, a company that was bought by Cart.com, and he's currently on his next venture at High Tag. So he'll have a booth outside if you guys are interested in learning more about his startup. We also have Connor McCarthy, And Connor is a founder and managing partner of the Canyonlands Fund. So that's an investment firm making investments in outdoor recreation businesses. And Connor got his MBA at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where he met his wife. And he also has a BA in the economics from the University of Georgia. So we're really excited to have Connor here with us. And also a big fan of the outdoors. He splits his time between Utah and Brooklyn, New York. So if you all are curious about the East Coast, also talk to Connor. And then we also have Dan here, Dan Kiahanya, Director of REI Path Ahead Ventures. Dan brings extensive entrepreneurial experience with multiple startups and multiple exits also under his belt. And last but not least, we also have Karen Barsa. So Karen has held CEO, C-level, and board director positions at Patagonia, Performance Sports Group. The list can go on and on. So if you would love to learn more about these organizations, please talk to Karen after our panel. It's so great to see so many brands also that Karen has worked with. I'm sure we have some fans of UGG, Hoka, Teva. I know I saw some out there, so very good. I think those are, again, areas and corporations that we love to see supporting entrepreneurs here. So if anything, introduce all our lovely panelists. I think I want to go ahead and dive into our first question because it's more of an icebreaker. I want to just get everyone to get to know, what was everyone's favorite outdoor memory? I remember when we were prepping for the session, everyone had a range of memories, very personal and near and dear to their hearts. So let's start with that one. What does everyone think, and who wants to kick us off?
I'll kick us off. My wife and I just celebrated our first anniversary this past weekend. We got engaged at Yavapai Point at the Grand Canyon at sunrise, and that'll be a memory that stays with me for all time.
That's very cool. I'll tell you, if I may, that many years ago, my dad became a single parent of 2 young girls almost overnight. And, we watched as Dad tried to take on some of the chores that Mom did without question. And you know what? Dad wasn't so good at it. So we really began to lose a bit of respect for Dad until he decided to make a great move, which was to take us into the outdoors. He took us camping. In all honesty, that trip not only cemented our love for the outdoors, but also helped us bond with Dad and made him the expert that we respected until his death. So that's a wonderful memory for me of the outdoors.
I think mine is actually a sort of an array of memories. So I grew up in the action and extreme sports, sort of doing all of those sorts of things. That's my flavor of outdoor recreation. And growing up, every Thanksgiving, we would take these week-long trips out to Madisonville, Texas, to go dirt biking with some family friends. And we would spend all day just trekking out through the woods, and then all night sitting around a campfire in chairs like these. With a campfire, I'm going to pretend is here for the rest of this talk. And those were really special times that I look back on really fondly.
So I grew up as a city kid in the East Coast, and it was really the Boy Scouts that ushered me into the outdoors. And so I got a lot of confidence and understanding and love for being outside. So as an adult, I embraced that in many different activities. But one of the most fond memories for me, which I shared with the group in our call, was I was on a canoe trip in central Michigan when I lived in Michigan. And a bunch of friends and some friends of friends, and we had several canoes, and we were going to go all day. It was a pretty significant day of paddling, and about literally 5 minutes into our embarkation, another canoe with 2 young ladies in it swamped immediately. And from the looks on their faces as they emerged, they were over their depths, both literally and figuratively. So I said, with my partner, I said, Mark, we need to split them up. We'll take, you'll take one of them, I'll take the other one, and we'll guide them down the river. And so the one that ended up going with me, well, I said, yeah, we're about the same. We'll balance off each other size-wise, ended up becoming my wife. So she was stuck with me for about 3.5 hours with me telling her, no, left, paddle right. No, paddle left. I'm a nice guy.
And so the reason we opened up with this question is because the outdoors brings people together. I'm sure you all probably resonated with one of the stories here, and so we really want to take that to heart as we're having this discussion, because it is about bringing folks together, not just corporates, not just startups. At the end of the day, that people-to-people interaction is the one thing you can only get outside. So keeping up with the topic, the great outdoors actually changed a lot because of the pandemic, and I think we all noticed that personally and professionally. I know for me, it was taking a walk at least 30 minutes at some point in my day to keep my sanity, because you can only stare at a screen for so long. So I want to open it up to our panelists, and actually maybe starting with you, Karen. How do you think, coming out of COVID-19 has actually made the outdoor rec industry change for the better?
Oh, it has changed for the better. Humans need socialization, there's no doubt about it. And when we were all in lockdown, one of the only ways that we could socialize was outdoors. Now, for some people, that included significant outdoor experiences, but for others, it was just a matter of getting out in their yard or taking a walk around the neighborhood, that sort of thing. Now we have, as an outdoor industry, the attention of so many people that we didn't have before. And it's a matter of how can we help them transition from their front yard to the wild. And I hope that's what we're going to discuss further today.
I love that. And if anything, I feel like, Alex, you mentioned the more extreme side of the outdoors that I think also resonates a lot with our audience. What do you think about this question?
So I was going to say, I'm going to preface everything else that I say today with that. That's the perspective that I'm taking on outdoor rec, is from the extreme and action sports. But it's kind of funny. So starting up on any of these sorts of activities, it's almost like committing a crime. Like you need, motive, means, and opportunity. And what an opportunity that COVID brought us, right? Where all of a sudden you almost had nothing else to do but go outside. And so you saw a lot of people venturing out for the first time. You've also seen things like just the way that social media has sort of changed the game. That all of a sudden, a lot of the motivation, the inspiration that come from doing these things, most people don't discover skateboarding or dirt biking or cycling on their own. They're usually exposed in some way, right? And so the way that social media has sort of changed our own lives in almost every aspect, a lot of people are discovering these sorts of things for the first time.
Totally. So if anything, I hope folks are jotting this down, the ample opportunity that's out there, not only in terms of market size, but also just that new consumer perspective. So if anything, I noticed that more folks like myself, and everyone I'm sure has heard of Gen Z at this point, so those folks that are still experimenting with products, trying things out, going outside, I think there's also a generational shift that's happening. So if anything, would love to point this question at you, Connor. How do you see these generational changes kind of impacting outdoor recreation?
Sure. We're really lucky. We have invested in a series of summer camps on the East Coast. So a lot of our clients are Gen Z, and a lot of our seasonal staff are Gen Z. And two of the ways that we really see outdoor rec potentially innovating over the next couple of years, one in mental health, and two in the workforce. So in mental health, there's the highest rate in history of incidences of diagnosis of mental health. And while there are traditional services out there like wilderness therapy, it's a question of how are they going to be integrated into other current services like camping, or Gen Z is more digital native, so how are they taking digital native, tech services and marrying those with mental health? The second way is as employers. We employ hundreds of Gen Zers every summer, and some of the things that we hear consistently are, I value time way more than money, so I want to experience life now rather than saving for retirement. We often hear I want flexibility in how I work and when I work and where I work. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as employers to figure out how to shift the workplace. And outdoor recreation is really uniquely positioned to do that, particularly seasonal businesses and businesses that are in hospitality, so like hunting, like whitewater rafting, guiding. And so those are the two areas that I would focus on. And as employers, I think those are the two areas that we have a huge opportunity to shift the way that the outdoor recreation industry works.
That's great. And I think, if anything, for the corporates in the room, right, taking notes on that, the fact that these generational shifts are going to impact, the future job market. But if anything, Dan, I think this question also speaks a lot to the mission at REI path ahead. So would love to get your perspective, especially since from all our prior speakers, we heard so much about inclusivity and the fact that, diversity, equity, inclusion becoming the forefront and the foundation. Would love to get your perspective if that's also part of this.
Yeah, I think that the diversity and inclusion and the climate and sustainability are native for younger generations. They've grown up with those things. They're going to school and now working with the most diverse groups of people that they've had as a generation. And they're shopping their values in terms of the sustainability. As Phil mentioned, they want to know where things come from, right? And so I think that's super important for most companies to have clear positions and clear heritage as they build their companies. If you're doing a startup, both of those things are very important. From a sort of trend point of view, I think from the outdoor perspective, we're also seeing less folks like me, I'm Generation X, where it was about escape and solitude and doing things on your own and mastery to doing things together. Gen Z loves to do things together. That's why they capture everything in social media, as Alex pointed out. And so there's a sense of let's explore these things together. And if there's different levels of expertise, let's help each other reach a certain level of confidence and mastery. And so I think as you think about building a brand or a product for outdoor retail, particularly for Gen Z, sustainability, traceability, how is your product becoming inclusive is going to be super important.
For sure. And if anything, I think I personally get excited because my friend group, documenting everything. There's a new social media app every other day at this point. And I think that's a huge opportunity, again, to get people out that maybe would have never gone outside in the first place. Or get, the campgrounds and the parks to look a little different, right? Folks that maybe didn't think it was for them. They're seeing themselves outside and saying, you know what, I'm going to try this biking thing out. Or, you know what, so-and-so's going on a trail. I think I'm going to go with so-and-so. And then you end up, again, making those friendships, bonds, and connections that I think are also another really exciting area. And I feel like, at least in the venture capital industry, we tend to look at, the 5, 10, 50-year timeline. So I want to pose this to, a majority of the panel here. Fast forward 50 years. What does outdoor recreation look like? And if we can give the inside scoop to the audience, I feel like we can get a leg up.
Shall I go? Okay. Look, one thing will never, ever change, and that is human curiosity. It will never change. So if you're building a brand, you're building a product, you're making pathways for people to enjoy the outdoors, help them enjoy the outdoors by seeding that a little bit with some information for folks where they can take that information and apply it to what they're doing outside. So, for instance, you might say there are a little factoid in whatever you're doing would go miles. Why am I not thinking of one right now? Heaven only knows. But there are many ways to help people connect with the outdoors and give them something to look for out there. So it's not just a matter of speaking to the people who are already outdoors and already know what they're doing. Help the new people get in touch as well.
I think about this a little bit from a business model perspective, and so a couple things come to mind, and maybe this is informed by the last couple of years. The first is I think that we're going to see more and more niche B2B software providers. I mean, we've seen that over the last couple of years. So we've seen investments in Aspira by Alpine Investors. That's a booking platform for national parks. We've seen an investment in CampMinder by SCP. And so these productivity tools, whether it's operations management, camper management, inventory management, client management, inventory management. I think we're going to see an increase in that. Secondly, I think we're going to see an earlier monetization of consumer software, and I think that's an important thing for anyone who's working on a consumer software product to think about. If you look around right now, especially over the last 6 months, a lot of companies, a lot of investors are suffering from the idea that we just need to grow users and not really think about revenue or profitability. But that's not going to go forward over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we're going to pull monetization forward, I believe. Product market fit, monetization has to be a core of that. And you see a couple companies that have actually really done that well and maybe succeeded over the last 18 months or so in the pandemic. So Strava is a big one. They just received a huge investment. Same with All Trails. Trail Forks was bought by Outside. They all figured out how to monetize their product. And then I think the last big one is that we'll probably see increasing consolidation, both from financial buyers and from strategic buyers. We've got an amazing industry, right? It's huge, as we just saw. It's growing. It's highly fragmented. We have an amazing consumer base who's extremely passionate and is relatively price insensitive. And we have really passionate entrepreneurs who are looking for capital partners. And so I think the industry has a really, really bright future. And as part of that, it's going to attract more investment.
Yeah, it almost feels like a flywheel effect that's forming, right? You have the capital, you have the talent, you have the interest in the consumers. But I feel like from the entrepreneur's perspective, Alex, like I'm sure there's something here.
Oh yeah, I was actually about to go back to my my means, motive, and opportunity deal, which I've never said out loud before, but I like it and I'm going to stick with it. All of these sort of outdoor activities we talked about on the prep call. That there's sort of a barrier to entry in the equipment that you would need to go out and do a good hike or go for a good mountain bike ride. A lot of what's happening is you'll see now that, versus 20 years ago, good equipment is becoming really affordable and affordable equipment is becoming really good, which is lowering the barrier to entry on the means side. On the opportunity side, I'm actually going to do a quick plug for some of the GORP companies that were up here earlier. Companies like Trail Pilot and Encore Bike Rentals are making it easier than ever to just show up in a city and go for a ride. And so definitely check out Trail Pilot is over at has the booth out today, and then I think Encore is supporting the ride tomorrow. And then on the on the motive side, I'm going to go back to the social media deal and Gen Z. Actually, first I'm going to take you on a little journey back through my my background in skateboarding. I grew up as a skater kid. 20 years ago, skateboard brands would create full-length films with all their sponsored athletes, and you could go and buy like a VHS of a Birdhouse Skateboards VHS to go home and watch and see all your favorite pros. Today, I was just over at the BMX racing headquarters in Tulsa a couple weeks ago. One of the things that I learned there is that actually today sponsorships are very different, right? Those full-length films aren't really happening so much anymore. Now sponsors are actually paying basically for social media posting quotas, right? So they'll actually tell an athlete, you need to be posting this many times a week or this many times a month. And so that is, that's also kind of lowering the barrier to finding out about these sports. I don't have to go to a store to see it for the first time. It's sort of coming to me where I already am.
For sure. Or I remember I was the kid who had a ton of magazines. I would like cut out all my favorite athletes and like make this little mood board. So I think, the fact that everything's shifting online, going online, again, people hopefully get to see themselves. And if anything, that's an inspiration.
Yeah, I actually have a larger view. I think for 50 years from now, I would love to see outdoor recreation as big as movies and video games. And I think there's vast segments of the population who don't recreate today the way we think about outdoor recreation. So my vision is, as a unique industry that involves mission and climate and product and experience, that we could be a defining industry, like one of the biggest industries really in the world, because nature and outdoors is accessible to everybody. It's not technically accessible, but from a vision standpoint, everybody should be able to be inspired by the outside. And so my vision for 50 years from now is this room has got 1,000 people in it, right? Right here in Bentonville, talking about like, this is 50 years from now, and we are the leading industry that's setting the pace.
Yeah, and I think the numbers from Katherine's presentation earlier set us up for that. There's immense growth, and I think that's going to keep happening just because of, again, not only the folks in this room, but honestly, all the visionaries that we have on the panel, right? Who's going to be pushing the envelope to keep us getting there? So if anything, I came up with the concept of bringing the outside in, which at first, doesn't really make too much sense. But for the folks that, normally don't go outside, or even, when you're out buying new gear, right? That's not necessarily something that you can only do on your phone, only online. There have been really interesting studies that depending on your generation, you either read a ton of reviews and then go buy something, or you ask family and friends, or you just wing it, you go, and then you probably just end up returning it because you don't like it. So I think in terms of just bringing the outdoors to more folks, even beyond a product perspective, I would love to hear, if anything, Dan, I feel like REI, again, does this so well. If you don't mind speaking to how can we keep building on that?
Yeah, it's something we think about all the time. I mean, REI prides itself on having 12,000 people in our stores, our sales associates, we call them the green vests, who are knowledgeable and can help do consultative sales, essentially. And because outdoor activities dictate the gear and apparel, understanding where somebody's level is, understanding their comfort, their expertise is so important to helping them to pick the right products and services. But we're trying to find ways to go beyond that. Even once somebody's in the store, can we do things like Phil mentioned the re-commerce aspect of the industry. At REI, we call that resupply. And one of our most successful stores in the last 6 months is Manhattan Beach in the Los Angeles area. And they have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on resupply. And so if you think about this idea of accessibility for pricing, if you're new to an activity or you're new to the outdoors, writing a big check or having a big charge on your credit card shouldn't be prohibitive for you to experience those things. So that's definitely one of the ways. We're also looking at different formats for stores. We have a smaller store format now that we're experimenting with. We have one in Cambridge where, again, we have small footprint, small square footage, small inventory in-house, but heavily on a sort of consultative, come on in, talk to us about what you think you'd like to do. Come in with a friend. If they know what they're doing and they're trying to explain it to you, but they're not that great at explaining, they're better at doing, come in, we'll help you with that. I would say that there's also going to be coming in the future, and we see this through Path Ahead and some of the companies that come through sort of our transom, is this idea of everything from the metaverse to technology and these immersion ideas, right? Whether that's in a store, at the trailhead, where you can have somebody who can almost feel, smell, taste, live what it's like going to be on a trail, whether it's action sports or something as simple as hiking, running, or biking. So, we as an industry, I think, can continue to push the envelope on that. It's going to be pretty hard, I think, to Amazonify. No offense to Amazon, they've done some great stuff. Our industry, because
this is the place to offend Amazon, I think.
You never know who's in the audience. But I don't think that's gonna happen, right? I mean, people want to touch things, they want to feel it, and especially if it's going to be in the context of being outside, where they want to have both enjoyment and safety. You're going to see more and more of that.
It's like such a personal decision, right? A lot of these outdoor things involve you and your safety or a family member's safety. And so if anything, I remember, Karen, you mentioned almost the intimidating factor of going in a store. I've definitely felt that way before I made outdoorsy friends in California. They were like, no, just go into Patagonia. And I was like, I'm never really in Patagonia.
Because Patagonia was a very intimidating place for a while. I was at Patagonia many, many years ago, and our stores were like museums. You walk in and you think, oh, I have to whisper here, and I don't want to ask any questions. And if I don't recognize any of the products on the shelves, I'm just going to leave. So we did our best when I was at Patagonia to help relax the stores and make them more accessible to people. And I'll tell you, that made a huge, huge difference. The outdoor industry is no longer just about the very few outdoor experts. It's really about inviting your neighbor and everyone else in your town outside. And that is, I think, what we really need to be about now. And the industry, I think, is just cresting that hurdle from here, you can be an expert at this, and here's the equipment to do that, to here's the equipment to try this and enjoy yourself while you're out there. Very different perspective.
Yeah, and I think lowering that barrier to entry, again, not only brings more folks, it increases all those lovely numbers we saw earlier, right? That GDP, that commerce that's going on. And so if anything, I would love to end on a high note of everyone here in the audience, on the panel, has a vested interest in the great outdoors. And I really think we have momentum. So what was one thing that you all would love to leave the audience with, just either as an action item, something to keep top of mind, just to keep building on this momentum?
Go for it. No, you go first.
I think one thing is, look, I can remember the specific people who got me into, a friend of mine named Brady got me into skateboarding, a friend named Scott got me into dirt biking, my brother and co-founder got me into snowboarding. It's like I can remember the specific moments where I was exposed to these sports and activities for the first time. And so that's one thing that I could urge everyone here to do is next time you go biking or hiking or running or jogging or swimming or kayaking, take someone new who's never done it before and kind of show them the ropes, let them borrow your equipment or help them find good rental equipment, but get them exposed. I think that's how we continue to grow.
Indeed. And Alex, my guess is that with each exposure, I mean, from the very beginning, probably you felt a connection to the outdoors.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be true for every one of us. The outdoors is inside each of us. So be gentle with a new person. Introduce him or her to the outdoors in a way that he or she enjoys it. And then you can up the volume a little bit. You can turn up the heat a little bit if you care to. But introduction is very important, I think, to everyone who works in the outdoors and everyone who experiences it.
I would say get a dog. I read recently that 78% of pet owners acquired their pet during the pandemic. And if you think about it, if you have a dog, you're getting outside at least twice a day when you weren't before, taking them on a walk, hopefully more than that. And you're going to be doing that for at least a decade, hopefully more, and you'll be a dog person for the rest of your life.
A lot of fellow dog lovers in the audience. I see the smiles.
Yeah, REI, that's a hugely exploding category is geared apparel for dogs and cats and other pets outdoors. So I think you got something there, Connor. You know, I agree with everything that the other panelists have said. Something that really hasn't come up a lot today is the connection to the indigenous communities. We carry this brand at REI called Urban Native Era, and they have hats that says you are on native lands, because everywhere in this continent essentially was native lands at one point. And so my request would be to connect with the local indigenous communities wherever you are. They have an amazing heritage and history around how to be in balance with nature and the outdoors, how to honor it, how to live with it, how to live on it. And a lot of times if you reach out, they're not about sort of like saying you can't recreate on our traditional lands. They want to help people understand what the connection is and why nature is so powerful, almost from a spiritual point of view. And so I think as an industry, we can continue to reach back and take advantage of really the great arc of sometimes thousands of years of heritage they've had with the land. And so I would say connect with your local indigenous communities.
That's phenomenal. No, let's give a great round of applause to our panel because amazing. So I know I personally learned a lot, and I just want to thank absolutely all of you for making the trek to Arkansas. And I think it was wonderful to just hear from all of your insights, and I just really appreciate it. So please, folks in the audience, if anything here stuck, our panelists are going to be around. Please chat up a conversation. They're just as excited about outdoor recreation as all of you. So thank you so much.
Find the clicker. Thank you. Oh, this is you. Okay. Good luck.
Alrighty. So right before we go off into networking, great food and drink, want to leave some folks with a couple more insights, just because, again, the VC industry for outdoor recreation is something that we really wanted to highlight with this event, just because it's not only my day-to-day, specifically because I'm in the brand and retail vertical. So we're excited about not only all the retail opportunities in outdoor recreation, but also the fact that you need a brand to actually be successful in this industry. Brands, logos, you guys saw a few startups on the past slides. Those are the things that really stick with people. And those are the things that people recommend to their friends and their neighbors. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to hit you all with a couple more statistics, just because, again, it's not just a massive industry. We think we're actually at the tip of the iceberg here, because a lot of these statistics, again, to Catherine's point, are gonna get updated, right? The pandemic fueled a lot of this growth, and we're gonna keep seeing that. And also on the very last line here, a special shout out to Northwest Arkansas for having all of those trails, something that's inherently unique to the space we're all here today. So just wanted to leave you all with 3 really quick trends, because we can't deny the fact that COVID changed how outdoor recreation is changing. So if I can get back to my original slide here. There we go. This was alluding to the generational changes that I mentioned earlier, the fact that folks need friends or family, they need the reviews, they need social media to QC whether or not they're gonna go out and buy something. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that there were more first-timers outside than ever before. And I think that's a really amazing thing that we're only gonna keep growing. So if anyone hasn't thought about how this is gonna impact the next generation, the next group of first-timers that are outside, I think we can all tell when it's someone's first time on a campground or a trail. And we wanna be mindful that, again, they're new to the space, but we wanna welcome them because, again, they're the future of this industry. The other aspect we wanted to cover, and I think Dan was making a really good point about treading that line between the environment and the outdoors that we love so much. How do we preserve it for generations to come? And how do we really keep in mind that sustainability is gonna have to be a part of the conversation? So the graphic here I thought was really relevant to a lot of folks in the room, because at the end of the day, one of these 3 categories we contribute to. Whether you're the one sitting in traffic, whether you're the one that's, ordering a lot of things. I know we mentioned Amazon, but who doesn't love 2-day shipping? I think there's a lot of value in looking to what's the future of that. And again, RAI with the resupply program, how are we being creative of extending the life of our products, extending the amount of time that we spend with the goods that we buy? And I know even getting creative with the community, right? I know where I grew up, hand-me-downs were really big. And so there are even ways to personally start contributing to what I like to call as the environmental bottom line. And the last trend is more of an open question to all of you, which is, the folks that are outside, the picture here of the communities that are forming out there, how can we really keep this momentum going in terms of merging the virtual and the digital along with everything that we take so dearly in person? And so instead of giving you all more statistics, I wanted to leave you all with a few questions, right? If there was a master class for setting up a tent or to go on your first trail ride, who's building that? Who's thinking about that audience? And then at the same time, if there is a vlogger that can go viral tomorrow and bring 1 million folks to Arkansas, who's that vlogger gonna be? And is it the fact that they're gonna be filming it from that backyard likely? Probably yes. We've lowered the barrier to entry to be able to go viral at any moment in time, and we can use this for our advantage of not only tourism, but also promoting the products and the sustainability initiatives that we're really excited about. And then last but not least, I think there's an immense strength in partnerships. So the partnerships being formed between the local community, the community groups such as the indigenous groups that Dan mentioned, as well as the government and local organizations that at the end of the day have to be a part of the equation because they have the most connections to the ecosystem in the local and external environment. So I think here I just want to take the chance to say it's an opportunity to not only level the playing field, so to speak, but also just help those newcomers stay in the industry. That's one of the reasons why we're so bullish on outdoor recreation. We see this bubble, it's not gonna pop. If anything, it's a flywheel. It's gonna keep building and growing, and everyone here has a contribution to that. So rather than just make this kind of a monologue conversation, I actually wanted to open it up to all of you in the audience. We'll have a couple mics on the side of each row here, and so if anyone has a question, whether it's venture, the statistics that we had up here, the future of retailers, brands, nothing's off the table. I would love to have, in the last 10 minutes here, more of a Q&A style. So if anyone even had something that the panelists talked about, would also just love to spend some time on that. I see a question over there. If we could hand the gentleman a mic, please.
So my name is Ryan Shelton. I'm with FlowFeed, one of the companies out here. One of the questions that I didn't see directly addressed today, we talked a little bit about COVID and its impact, but what are your thoughts on, are we gonna see a local maxima due to COVID in 2020, 2021 in the surge of outdoor activities? What do you think that looks like moving forward? Surely some of that is going to stick, but some of it certainly isn't. So how are you thinking about that? Does anybody have thoughts on what that might look like over the next 5 to 10 years compared to pre-COVID numbers?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And I think because I was an economics nerd at school, we were taught to think about cycles. And I think COVID is just another example of a cycle that whether you're an entrepreneur, a corporation, someone who's contributing to just anyone's bottom line, I think we need to take COVID as an example of a cycle. The fact that will we likely have another grave situation that makes us all bunker down? To be completely honest, we might. We probably will, whether it's environmental or health-wise. So instead of trying to, prepare for the worst, I think the inner optimist in me is prepare for the best. When that downturn comes again, who are the companies that are gonna be out there? Who are the folks that really got their name out there? And how did they build that foundation? That regardless of having 1 million users or 2,000 users, they still built a product that was sticky enough. And so to your point about the local maxima, I think if we can envision a larger graph probably over the next 100 years, I think COVID is a peak, and there's gonna be another peak, and then another peak, and it's just gonna widen. Because we're learning every single time something like this happens. And so again, being optimistic, because we've learned so much through COVID, I think the next time something similar happens, not only are companies better prepared, communities are, families are. So I think I'm very optimistic about, again, that's another opportunity. That's more folks. Those are newer generations that are gonna take this in a completely different direction. So I think it's just one of many peaks, just to kind of, be a little bit more optimistic about the fact that, how likely something like that's gonna happen. I think people are prepared now. I think people are now thinking about things in a different light. And so, if anything, I think bullish on society and humanity as a whole. So thank you so much for asking that. Yes, question right here.
Hi, my name is Rachel Fox, and I'm with NWA Girl Gang. There are a lot of nonprofits here that focus on outdoor programming and recreation, and I'm wondering, is there anything that you could share with us to create better partnerships or relationships with brands, sponsors, or even funding for us? There's this, we want to make sure we know what our avenues are.
Yeah, of course. I think if anything, I know it's all about research these days. I actually volunteered for a local nonprofit all throughout college, and one of the exercises our director made us do every summer was pick our dream brands and our dream partners, go on their website, and try to figure out who can make an introduction to an individual there. Because a warm introduction can go way beyond a cold application that 10,000 folks are applying for. And so I mentioned this exercise because it was actually incredibly eye-opening to see programs that I didn't even knew existed just show up in my Google search because I personally wanted to work with Lululemon, and then to go ahead and see that they fund diverse founders and the diverse startups that we were volunteering for, being able to send them that link and say, hey, it's actually due in 2 months. Maybe it would have never gotten on their radar. So I think the internet, thankfully, is a beautiful thing where, you know, it's helpful in that regard. But I think I really want to double down on the fact that there are folks in your local community beyond LinkedIn that can help foster those relationships. And I think to my second point, it would be you can also make these programs happen. And that actually happened back at my school. One of the really big partners we wanted to work with had a ton of community presence, didn't typically give any grants or support to nonprofits that we were volunteering for. And we actually ended up having a meeting with their board of directors and saying what an impact having a program like that could have. And we would be honored to be one of their first pilots. And so if anything, it goes to show, you know, if it's not there, make it. And I think I would love to see, you know, organizations that, you know, you might be working with, go ahead and propose that, because there's strength in numbers. If there's 10, 50, 100 organizations that want to see a certain program happen, brands are all for it. I think everyone's trying to figure out authenticity is something that I personally spend a ton of time researching, because it's something that necessarily the data doesn't show, but folks are more loyal, even though rising customer acquisition costs keep happening. But if you build a genuine bond with someone, who's to say that your organization isn't the one that brings the next million customers? So I think there's a lot of value, again, in maybe head down a little bit of research, but also bringing the community together and saying, hey, XYZ doesn't exist, but it would be really powerful if it did. And by the way, here are the lists of signatures of folks that are ready to make something like that happen. And so, again, I went to school in New Jersey, very, very small college. And if anything, Dan, I think you have some ideas here too. Please.
I just want to say that that's a great question. And while Path Ahead Ventures, my group, doesn't do nonprofits, REI has a long heritage of working with local community organizations. And just as already said, that this is how we connect to people who want to come outside. We have something called the REI Cooperative Action Network and Cooperative Action Fund. It's just reifund.com or .org, I always forget. But if you want to ping me, then I can certainly make a connection to those folks for you as well. We just launched yesterday our collaborative line with Outdoor Afro. And so they're entering into a for-profit stage, but they have been a nonprofit. For those who don't know, they have tens of thousands of members and dozens of chapters around the country. And we've been working with them as a nonprofit for 13 years. So there's other companies, just like already said, reach out to them because they want to help and they want to be involved. So, but you can follow up with me for sure if you want to connect with REI.
Thanks, Dan. I think, again, industry perspective, connections, right? The beauty of having in-person events. And I see we have another question in the back. Can you have a mic, please?
Hi. Thanks for putting this together today. So I live in the US. I spend a lot of time in the UK. And one of the big macro themes is not only coping with the challenges on supply chains and related areas with COVID, but also where we make things and how we make things. There's a big discussion going on. I spend a lot of time here thinking about that. I noticed in the earlier presentation there was a discussion about making great products. That's obviously a goal for any company that's building products. But there's also a need for the customer base to understand if we are going to make things in a better way, in a more sustainable way, in a more mindful way, there's probably going to be some additional challenges in terms of the cost base of making those products and educating the customer around what it means to have a locally sourced, locally manufactured product where people are getting paid a living wage, we're using sustainable materials. And I'd love to hear from the folks at Patagonia or REI or others about how we can begin to educate people about what it means to buy these products.
That's a great question. Karen or Dan, I think specifically in terms of quality of products, I feel like either of you could really speak to it.
Sure. You know, what's incredible about Patagonia is that the products began as very, very high-priced products, and they remain so in the outdoor industry. And yet Patagonia has an incredible following. When I was with Patagonia, it was maybe 1/6 the size that it is today. This is a very fast-growing company and a very significant one. So price point hasn't necessarily been a problem in terms of developing the Patagonia aficionado, if you will, or the Patagonia customer. But what is very important are stories. So my thought is that this is true. If you can speak to your customer base, regardless of whether that means you have the highest priced product or the lowest priced product or the most environmentally sensitive or not, or what have you, if you can speak to your customer base, then you can have them, frankly, for life. The outdoors is about something that's inside of each of us. Once you begin to tap that in humans, they don't necessarily run to the cheapest product or what have you. They run to the product that solves their needs in the outdoors. So.
Yeah, at REI, we take it very seriously. And, you know, the industry has progressed, much like Karen said, function and fit, primary usage. But we just introduced, I think it was the end of last year, our new product standards, which will be officially in place by 2023. So you can just, they're public, so you can just Google REI Product Impact Standards. And it's not just about sustainability, labor practices, and source origin and materials. It's also about inclusive sizing and naming conventions. And so it's fairly comprehensive to try and address some of the things that you're talking about. I think we still will have farther to go in terms of making those things more transparent on a per product basis. But our starting point is this is the threshold to sell with REI. Is you're going to have to meet these standards. And so I think as an industry, we have to wrestle with this challenge of like, how do we deal with the performability or the innovation in and of itself, but also build adaptability to the things we're talking about. I know at Path Adventures, we see a lot of new brands that are coming in from Gen Z founders, and they're already thinking about that from day one, which is really, really healthy.
Yeah, that was a fantastic question. I think the evolution of what we're going to see for products is going to be immense. And I think we have 2 more questions in the back. 1 question.
Hi, I'm Brianne. I'm the CEO of Seeker. And we're building the Expedia of the outdoors for camping. So I'm a 3-time founder. I've bootstrapped, acquired through creative financing, and raised venture capital. I'm generally one of the very few people of color in rooms in the 2 networks that I go between, which is venture capital and the startup ecosystem and the outdoor industry. And I see in venture capital, there's a very strong and loud movement towards funding diverse leaders and putting money and resources behind diverse leaders, because that will then impact companies and who companies hire, and the trajectory goes on. In the outdoor industry, I see this like separation of like, we have for-profit and then we have nonprofit, which is focusing on diversity and inclusion. And I want to see, I guess my question is, how do you see diversity and inclusion initiatives being more powerful in the for-profit space as we're talking about innovation in the outdoors? Fastest growing demographics are people of color and women. Like, how do we start to change the trajectory of power and decision-making in the outdoors?
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal question, and I think one that I'm personally excited about. I think Plug and Play just, we're in the works of launching our new D&I initiative actually for that same reason. How are we being incredibly intentional about funding diverse founders and supporting them to make sure they're as successful as all the unicorns Will was showing earlier? So to your question, I think there's really 2 main concepts that I really want to highlight. The first is having folks representative in positions of power. And I think the only way that ends up happening is making these roles more accessible from the beginning. So, right, recruiting from schools that maybe aren't the traditional funnel school for venture capital, you name it, the list can go on. And I see that changing because there are a lot of up-and-coming organizations that I volunteer with personally that are trying to make that funnel a little bigger, right? Because if you at least have one diverse person in the investment committee, there's probably going to be a different perspective. Am I saying that deal is going to go through? No, there's never any guarantee to anything like that. But I think getting those folks in the room is a start. And then I think to your point about getting those folks from nonprofit versus for-profit, I agree. I think there is a skew, right? You end up seeing more folks working with diverse communities in the nonprofit space. And I think that's because that's what we see traditionally, right? And so since we see that as the majority, we see that as those really big success stories, people really want to emulate that. And I think the caveat to that is being able to, again, see representation in the unicorns. I think there's a reason all of the top funds, you name it, Andreessen, Sequoia, Tiger, they all have very specific initiatives for funding, again, diverse founders. And the reason is because the likelihood of the next decacorn, so not unicorn anymore, right? We have to think big here, is going to be someone diverse. And people are betting on that. And so I think you have it from both sides of the industry, the people writing the checks and then the people actually building the companies that, to your point, right, end up fundamentally hiring differently, end up having different points at the table. So I'm personally very excited. I think, Seeker is an example of, again, a company that's pushing the envelope. So definitely want to applaud you for representing that. And I think at the end of the day, we can only make the change that we want to see. So I really do think it's an exciting time for the space because venture capital, in all the books that I've read, looked very different 50 years ago. So I think we're making progress, but there's always going to be room for more. And I think we actually have time for one last question, just because I want to hand it off to Will to give us our closing remarks in a bit. So any last questions? Alrighty, well, if anything, thank you all so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions about anything, plug and play, VC, what we do, would love to just chat about that during our networking session. And again, thank you to our panelists for joining me up on here. It was a really great session. And I want to go ahead and hand it off to Will and Josh. They're going to tag team our closing remarks. Woo.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, and amazing job, Ori. Fantastic.
So in closing, we have so many people to thank. We tried to get everybody up on the screen, and I'm sure we missed a few folks. But I personally wanted to thank the Walton Foundation, Elin and Robert, for helping us put this thing together and supporting us on this initiative. We know how important outdoor rec is in the area, and thank you for trusting us to put this whole thing together. I also want to do a quick thank you to Will and Ori for flying in from California to be here with us today. And a huge thank you to Harry and Ariana, who have led this initiative locally for us, and we couldn't have put this event together without them. So major, major thank you for you guys for all the hard work in putting this together. All right, there's still more to come. So we are going to close and wrap up, and we are going to open these walls. And in the back are our startup group that are going to be here with cocktails and food. If you are a startup and you are not yet convinced from what Katherine had to say today about doing your startup activity in Arkansas, come find somebody. Come ask about it. We have James Bell from the Chamber of Commerce here. We have folks from the Walton Foundation. Katherine is here. If you're not sure about why you'd want to be in Northwest Arkansas, have that conversation. If you're an investor that's here, and I know there are many, I personally spoke to quite a few of the startups that are here. Many are interested in your money and your resources and your time. Please seek them out today. They are very, very interested in chatting with you. And if you're one of our corporate partners who happens to be here, the time is now for an accelerator in Northwest Arkansas for outdoor recreation. Come talk to Will, myself, and the team. We really feel is a huge opportunity to drive innovation and technology.
So just to add on to that, Josh, if I may, if you've already committed to be a part of the batch program that will be here in Bentonville focused on outdoor rec starting next year, great. If not, talk to us. And what I've learned from doing these types of programs with the team for so long is it is a contact sport. So you're here in the room for a reason. When you go to networking, talk to someone about a topic you've heard or just introduce yourself. A lot of the conversations and contacts made here is what makes lasting change. For me, I wish I had met Karen earlier because you said to ease people into the outdoors. So ask me about Bull Run Lake and the Sufferfest I put my family through for backpacking trips, but make those connections.
Tomorrow, because it wouldn't be an outdoor rec event without outdoor recreation. So tomorrow morning, come to Memorial Park at 10 a.m. We have Chris Clark, who's a professional BMX biker. He's going to do a demo. After that, there is an opportunity to get on the trails for a guided tour from one of the startups in GORP Cohort 1, Trail Tours. They're in the back. It'll be a fantastic opportunity. Encore Bikes will be there to rent bicycles this afternoon. If anybody's interested in going on the lake tomorrow for a VIP excursion, come find me. There's a few spots available for that. And then tomorrow evening, our friends at SheFly are hosting a happy hour at Moose Jaw. So there is plenty more tomorrow. Thank you everybody for attending today, and we're looking forward to the networking session in the back.
Thank you.